Hello, I'm Jim Cornwall, and this is the WalkingPost.com podcast. WalkingPost.com is the news website dedicated to walking, with all the latest on books, festivals, health, gear, trails, events, fitness and more. This podcast is number 45 and it's going out live on March the 20th. We headed out to do some filming in Berwick-upon-Tweed last weekend, and it didn't even rain. An amazing place, and I wish I'd been there before. If you've not been, well worth the visit, as is most of Northumberland. Even in March it was busy, and we saw an owl on the way there. Funny how to get southeast to Berwick, we have to drive all the way north to Glasgow, then across to Edinburgh, and then down again. It's a bit like crossing the Thames by going through Brighton. Let's get to March the 20th. It is Red Nose Day, French Language Day, which is odd because that's English. It's International Day of Happiness, and if only that were true. It's Ravioli Day and Frog Day and Alien Abduction Day, although it doesn't say if that's being abducted by an alien or humans abducting aliens. And spring is finally here. Well, literally, but not if you look out the window. It's the day in 1999 the first Legoland outside of Europe opened, and that was in California. And it's also the birthday of Vera Lynn and Spike Lee. For interviews, we've made it out of the mountains, although there is, I guess, a bit of an alpine connection. Last week we had a conversation with ultra-marathoner and coach Ekaterina, or Kate, Preobrazhenskaya, about her trip to the Alps. And this week we're staying in the Alps, kind of, because the travel company Exped Tribe is based there in Switzerland. And they run hikes and expeditions and treks and outdoor activities all over the world. And we will find out all about it from the company's founder, David Guzzardi. Before we get going, if you do have any news, guest ideas or even subjects to cover, or comments, or if you want to advertise, please do get in touch via walkingpost.com, or you can just email me at jim@walkingpost.com. Okay, let's go through some of the headlines of the news articles you may have missed that we had on walkingpost.com this past week. And it was a bumper week for news. I even have some left over for next week. Businesses are seeing a boost as the coast-to-coast path becomes a national trail. Nautiv 8 has launched the Armadillo Field Light hiking footwear, and REI Co-op introduced its Spring 2026 gear and apparel. Wales has opened a section of a new 80-kilometre forest trail. The American Heart Association is urging people to walk more, and the East Coast Greenway Alliance on the US East Coast wants to double walking by 2030. A new group has been set up to help safeguard the future of Warrington Walking Day. iSpring unveiled its outdoor portable filter straw, and the Appalachian Trail, depending on how you say it and where you're from, it could be the Appalachian Trail, saw almost 17 million visits in 2025. 5 new walking trails have opened in Singapore. Booking is now open for a Lincolnshire Walking Festival, and $1.4 million in Recreational Trails Program grants is available in Virginia. And you can read all of these and more at walkingpost.com. So that means it's time for this week's conversation. Exped Tribe is based in Switzerland, although I wonder if the company's founder, David Guzzardi, is ever actually there. He's generally to be found leading a trek or adventure vacation somewhere, so I guess we were lucky to catch up with him and find out about some of the amazing and unusual places the company takes outdoor enthusiasts to. Hi David, great to finally catch up with you, and thanks for taking the time out of that busy schedule for a chat. Maybe you could first tell us a bit about the company.
Yes, absolutely. So we are a fairly young company based in central Switzerland. 1 hour approximately from Lucerne. And we organize and operate mountain guided tours and expedition tours, actually on every altitude, latitude. And yeah, we have been pioneering some quite interesting trips in the past few years, and attract the adventurous type of person that already maybe has taken the first steps in the nature, hiking, trekking, climbing, but wants to venture out a bit more and explore and see more remote places. And for this needs maybe the support of expert guides. And so this is what we provide.
Could you tell me some of some of the places that you go to?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in the last few years, we've been from the Russian Kamchatka to Greenland to Norway to Iceland, South America, Peru, Bolivia. I mean, we've tick marked a lot of nice places, landscape speakingly, very nice places, and new destinations pop up every year depending on demand, interest, or new destinations that we discover.
How do you decide on those?
It's actually a bit instinctive. I mean, it comes a bit with hearing from the community where interest goes, where new mountain ranges, let's say, are discovered or are connected with logistical availability. From there, we start with our research and maybe do our first pioneering trip with a small group. So we go, let's say, with few customers and say, hey, this trip is a really pioneer trip. We don't know how it will turn out. And then from there, we start to offer it, and other customers join. And so we annex new routes.
All right. Are there some, like you mentioned, Kamchatka and some of the other places that are quite remote and not really considered to be tourism places? Do you find any challenges, or is that your first trip, is to work out those problems?
The type of trips that we offer comes with a lot of complexity and as well flexibility that requested, demanded, changes of plans. So yeah, it's part of the trip. We always have to communicate it when we have requests or someone that wants to join. Be aware we have a plan A, B, C, but still we are visiting places that require flexibility. And so we're constantly modifying our plans on the go or shortly before so that the trip runs smoothly, but it requires some flexibility, yes.
Could you tell me about some of those trips, some of the highlights of what you do? Is it all mountaineering, or is there trekking and...
There is a lot of trekking as well involved, mostly wild camping and trekking. So either hut to hut or multi-day hikes where you need to pitch your tent and sleep outdoors and carry most of your food. It's difficult to name highlights because every country has its own landmarks and things that are very cool and unique. So I wouldn't be able to say, I don't know, this country was the most beautiful. But of course, there are some memories from pitching tents in Greenland with a view on the ice cap, or as said, pitching a tent in bear country and being a bit worried, but still we had some safety plans in place. And so these small things stick to the memory and make it then a unique trip.
Do you try and pick places that are, I don't want to say unusual, but different to the usual kind of Himalayas or the Alps or the Camino?
Yeah, I mean, we proactively try to offer and promote new destinations. Of course, we have as well the Himalayas, Nepal, India, or the Alps, which are fairly requested because they live up to their name. But we try to promote new destinations because what we see is that the adventure component is way more present in these trips. Because, as said, this flexibility, this unknown leads to the point where people really bond together during the trip. And it turns really customers to friends after some days together. And this makes it a very special environment to be traveling together.
All right. Do you get people that come year after year and do a different trip every year?
Luckily, yes. Maybe if it's not right the year after, it's maybe 2 or 3 years after. But for me, it's a nice indicator, as said, that we really build up relationships as friends more than just customers, and that the trips, after all, are in a certain way enjoyable, even though they are strenuous on a physical viewpoint.
Right. And do you have a limit of the number of people that can go on any trip?
It depends a little on the trip format, if it's trekking, if it's ski touring, climbing, but we try to keep the groups fairly small. I would say maximum to 6, 8 participants, but most groups usually are in the range between 4 and 6 participants, so that it is more easy to adapt as well the plan and be flexible.
And how do you accommodate the fact that you might get somebody that is less fit or not as experienced? How do you accommodate the fact that some people walk at 7 kilometers an hour and other people walk at 3 kilometers an hour?
That's a fair question. We usually in advance conduct some calls with the group, or really ask in depth what the experience is, how they feel with hiking, let's say with a 20-kilo backpack. And from there, we already get some signals, how fit the person is, or even what the person is looking for in such a trip. And then we try to match these groups that are more or less uniform, so that the level is more or less the same within the group. But of course, it often happens that people either overestimate or underestimate their skills. It's quite human. And so we try to adapt, of course, to the least fit person in the group. So far, it works fairly well. Of course, it comes with sometimes changing the routes, or having an alternative peak that we can hike or climb, or shortening a trip or lengthening it. It really depends. But we try to be flexible by having a lot of plan Bs and Cs and Ds, so that it's not a surprise if we need to change something.
Right. And what about accommodation? Do you camp, or do you go into huts or hotels, or what's the plan there?
As well, there it depends a bit on the country, on the availability of accommodations. We try to promote camping during our trips. We really like the idea of pitching a tent and really being off and fully self-reliable during our trips. But of course, in some countries, it's not very comfortable or even doable if you're close by civilization. It depends a little on the destination, but wherever possible, we try to go with the tent.
How do you approach the contribution to the local economy, I guess, and working with locals?
That's actually another fair question, and it's not the first time that we've been asked about it. Because, of course, by going by tent and not maybe always using local guest houses or hotels, you're not fully supporting the local economy. We usually have local partners on site. So whether it being a partner guide or an accommodation here and there, so maybe we go on an accommodation every 3-4 days, and then in between we are in a tent, or have some other logistical services. So we try to mix it and match it a little, so that we are a bit reliant as well on local economies and on local support. And it's actually quite important because, as you say, this allows as well to gain an insight into the local culture, and not being just a closed group that just interacts within themselves but is sheltered from the place they're at. The most important thing during these trips is as well to get an eye into the local culture, right? So that you feel where you are.
Right. Yeah. Do you use local guides and do things like get involved in going for meals that kind of highlight or showcase the cuisine of that particular place? Or, how do you kind of get that culture feel?
Absolutely. I mean, we tried to do this as much as possible. As well, there's always then a but and if in this equation, because it's really dependent of the trip. But in the trips where it is possible, we try to as well include a guest house accommodation or a local meal, or there are other forms like a cultural introduction with the local guide. because yeah, of course, the knowledge of the locals is way more than the one of us just coming as externals and visiting a place and having maybe the hiking knowledge, but not the cultural knowledge of the place.
And how do you deal with things like politics? I know that there's people that take trips to places like Afghanistan, and there are problems there with, whether women are allowed into society enough. How do you deal with those political concerns that sometimes exist?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, the complexity rises quite a lot, right? If we take this into consideration as well. So I would say, luckily, up to now, we often had countries that, or let's say locations within countries that maybe were not super affected by issues of this type. At the same time, I am aware that it will not always be avoidable to visit a place where actually there are maybe partial conflicts or sensitive situations. For this, we of course try to talk with our customers in advance and try to avoid maybe from the beginning places that have these sensitive situations going on. But as we see, I mean, politics develop every day. It's a good question. I just know that we have to be extremely flexible, and as well, we have a task of instructing our customers to where we're going and how to respect the local situation, and as well not to turn this into a trip in dangerous areas, for example.
Have there been any problems?
Luckily, so far not. Some years ago, we had some issues on border regions. For example, when traversing from Kyrgyzstan to Tajikistan on the Silk Road on the Pamir Highway, we had some difficulties with authorities because they didn't know what we were doing. I mean, not very touristic areas. Of course, as a group of tourists, you raise a double exclamation mark because authorities do not understand what these tourists are doing here. And if it is tourists, but it was minor things. I mean, we were able to discuss and to show that we were actually a guided group exploring the area and just truly interested in the landscapes and the culture and nothing else.
Do you take in the information that people give you? I mean, if somebody were to say, oh, we'd really love to do a hiking tour in Armenia and you've never done one there, would you look into that?
Yes, that's actually part of the job that I find most exciting. This absorbing informations and developments, because people and trends and interests changes over time, and so there are changes in interest in the location. For example, now we see a lot of demand for Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, from let's say the Austrian, Italian, and German countries. And so for me, it's incredibly interesting to receive this feedback and start to looking at possible routes or tracks or ski touring trips. And for Armenia, it actually was the same. We really had a request from a young person who said, hey, I would like to trek there. And we were able to accommodate, and we went on a pioneer trip with this single customers. That was 4-ish years ago. And we were able to see some nice landscapes together, which otherwise we would not have had on the radar.
Do you take feedback after trips so that you can fine-tune them and make them better?
Absolutely. I mean, it's as well part of the job to understand where things have not gotten the right way, because of course it can happen, or where a hike was too strenuous, or where maybe could have been a bit more challenging. So we take it into account. At the same time, of course, every person has different needs, fitness level, interests. So it is not that this feedback we can reproduce one-to-one in the next group, because maybe they are more interested in short hikes and long camping days and looking at the culture. And so we really have to fine-tune it. And I think this is our strength, that we are not a big, huge corporation that sells mass tours. Of course, we have some, let's say, standardized program, but then we adapt it either before or on the go.
And do you do like specialized things such as bird watching tour or a photography tour or?
Not on this in this direction. We had in the past some pilot trips for photographers, let's say, to Iceland and to Patagonia. Sadly, we noticed that our fan base, our customers are mostly really interested in mountain sports. So, I mean, good to find out that we have the right community. At the same time, of course, a pity because we have a lot of different formats that could be interesting, right, for exploring countries, such as you say, wildlife, photography, and so on. For the moment, we sadly cannot accommodate this because we see it's a bit a different target group, but who knows where the trip goes.
Yeah, exactly. Is it a year-round business? I mean, do you go places 12 months of the year?
It's a year-round business. We have some seasonality, of course. I mean, there are months where we mostly have tours in Switzerland or in Europe. These are mostly the summer months, but it is slowly evolving in a way where every month there is a trip to a different country. Yes.
Is the practicality people pay for their own flights and your excursions start when they get to the destination?
You say it right. Yes, we only start our trips from the arrival point at the airport. We know that is fairly standard for bigger companies to organize the flights and purchase them. But for a small company like ours, it would add another layer of complexity and a lot of headaches. So of course, we give recommendations on possible flights and connections, but we are not booking the flights ourselves for the guests.
And how do you accommodate the fact that you might have somebody arriving from the UK and somebody from Germany and somebody from Canada all arriving on different flights? How do you coordinate that?
We often start our trips with an overnight in the city or in the area where the people arrive, because of course flights take long, they are tiring, so we never usually arrive and set off right away. We usually always have one night in the location, and so this allows to accommodate this arrival difference, right? Maybe some arrive in the morning, but then they check in, and in the evening we will have our briefing for the trip and discuss the day after where we really start. So this is a way to mitigate it.
All right. What are some of the more popular places that you go to? What are the ones that fill up instantly, I guess?
Well, it's as well difficult to say because in the last 5 years, I've seen that destinations really change constantly. But what I see is that, as said, the places that live up to their name, such as the Himalayas, South America, or as well the Alps, these are always and over requested. It has its benefits, of course, for us because it is easier to, let's say, organize a trip to Peru because it's requested fairly much. At the same time, it's a bit of a pity because we try to promote new destinations and new formats and ever-changing locations or trip types, but at the same time, it is more difficult to convince someone to visit a place that they've never heard of than to say we're going to Mont Blanc, and they instantly know it's a nice mountain.
Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the company that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, we have this very small practice after a trip. We like to gift some trees. I mean, we're not planting the trees ourselves, but we know that the program where we buy them really plants this tree, and the customers get a tree certificate and even could visit the place where the tree is planted. And this is a very tiny thing, but up to now we've planted a fair amount of trees, and that's something that at least makes us happy to be aware that there are some trees out there that are doing the effort to make our air a bit cleaner. It's in different countries, yes, but mostly it's located in Asia, in the Himalayas regions, and in Africa. So there's where big plantations, and we buy their trees for our participants and then send them the certificate afterwards.
Usually when I talk to people about places, I've either been there or close to there, but David really pushes the envelope with some of those amazing trips that I could only dream of. So that will do it for this week, and if you do have news or suggestions for podcast guests, please do get in touch through jim@walkingpost.com. And those guests can be about a new trail, a new book, a walking festival, or someone who's done an amazing, unusual, or interesting walk somewhere. Not quite sure what I'm going to do this weekend. If it's fine, it'll either be filming or doing some photos for a book, or there's an outdoor gear event that we might go to. Depends on a few factors. I'll let you know next week. Maybe it will just be doing the weekly shopping. So I hope you enjoyed this week's WalkingPost.com podcast, and I hope you have a great week ahead, hopefully with a walk somewhere. We do have to celebrate the arrival of spring somehow. Until next time, happy trails! Walking Post from WalkingPost.com is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.